Thank you, Erin, and thank you all for being here for this presentation on medical insurance and coverage denials. I'm going to share my screen. Just give you that in a second. All right. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to stop my video so you can just see the screen. There we go. All right. So hopefully you can all see that. And so, as I said, this is going to be about coverage, medical insurance coverage and denials, and what you should do if this happens to you, because there will always be an appeals process that you can go through. So, do this. Okay, so just a brief word on the Cancer Advocacy Project. So just to let you know that after this presentation, we will be sending a copy of this PowerPoint to Erin, so that you'll all be able to get this shared with you, so that if I'm going through all of this information and you miss something, you know, you will be able to get this and read this in, you know, in your own time and at your leisure. And so if something is happening with you now, or if something happens in the future, you will have this information to look back on. So this is our contact information for the project and what we do, and it's got our telephone number, and it also has our website in case you want to take a look. So the presentation today, these are the areas that it's going to focus on. I'll give you first a kind of overview of what the laws are that are generally behind, you know, whatever the insurance companies are going to be covering. So there are certain laws that give you protections in various areas to do with your medical health. And this is what, as attorneys, we would be looking at if we are trying to help somebody who has had their coverage denied. This, you know, sometimes these are the laws that we would be referring back to as to what rights you have, but also equally important in any of this kind of equation is what does your agreement with your insurance company say, because that is the primary source of what your rights are with that medical insurance company. So there are various things that an attorney would look at to work out what your rights are. And also what I'll be going over is how do you prepare an appeal, and there are different ways of doing that depending on whether it's you have private insurance or government insurance, such as Medicare or Medicaid. So as the overview of the chief laws that are kind of governing your health law, your health protections, it's COBRA, which is from 1968, HIPAA, which is to do with privacy in your healthcare, about your health information. So that's from 96. Then there's the Women's Health and Cancer Rights Act, which was 98. And then GINA, which to do with your genetic information, which was 2008. And then, of course, the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, which was 2010. So just a brief word about COBRA. So as you're probably all aware of this, because when you're at work, you know that if you have health insurance through your employer, if you leave, you're terminated, this is the kind of health transitional, if you like, healthcare option that you may have to go on to for a while. So it just allows you to continue to have your healthcare benefits as part of a group plan if you've lost your job for any reason, or you're transitioning to a new job. So and that lasts for up to 36 months after that transition begins, or the job loss. So your payments would come out of your pocket, but it would be at the group premium rate. But all the group benefits, you'd still have those. And the only problem is that COBRA can be very expensive, particularly if you have to do that for a long time. So it's an option, but it's not the same as, it's not the same money that would come from you if you were still in that particular job. HIPAA, so that's going to regulate what your health insurance information, who can get that, who can access that, who can that be disclosed to. So it's to do with your confidentiality about your health care. And this is important because, if you have an attorney who is helping you to appeal a denial of coverage, this is one of the forms that you would have to fill in, which would allow the attorney to speak with your insurer about your case, or with your medical provider, your doctor, or if they need to access your notes from a hospital or other medical facility. This is one of the forms, an authorization, a HIPAA authorization, that would allow the person who's assisting you to be able to get that information. So the WHCRA is to do with basically benefits related to mastectomies. So before that, before you had this kind of protection, you could have a mastectomy and you didn't have the same right to, for example, breast reconstruction or prosthesis or implants. Your insurer didn't particularly have to cover that. So now with this, legislation in place, with this law, you do have more rights if you have the procedure, if you have a mastectomy, about what options, what kind of services must be covered by insurers. So GINA, to do with its Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. So the purpose of GINA is to protect your genetic information. And this has become more important over the years because this is an area of the medical profession that is being used more and more. A lot more of the treatments that you have and the tests that you have involved your genetic makeup, your material. Your genetics can really affect many things about your chances of having a particular disease, or which medications, treatments may be better for you. But it could also, if it's misused, be used against you. So the purpose of this is to make sure that it's not misused, and so that, for example, a prospective employer can't say, well, you're prone to X, so we're not going to hire you. And an insurance company can't, get hold of you applied to someone for medical insurance, and they say, we're not going to provide you with coverage because you are prone, there's a chance based on your genetics that you're going to get this disease. So that's the purpose of GINA. So the Affordable Care Act, which of course is the most recent of these major healthcare protections, meant that before this act, cancer patients often face all sorts of additional problems, such as being denied coverage because they had a pre-existing condition, or lack of, basically uniform rules about your right to appeal a decision, or your policy, if you had one, could be cancelled because of a new diagnosis, or they could put caps on the amount of coverage you were entitled to. So it could say that, well, if you've already spent or caused to be spent on you X amount per year, we're not covering anything above that. So it might say, well, if your total healthcare costs, your insurance costs, go above $150,000 in a year, we're not paying anything more than that. And as we all know, cancer treatments can be very expensive, and so people could find themselves locked out of medical coverage after a certain point during a year. And there are also even cases where you had a lifetime maximum. If you went beyond that, that was it, unless you could find some other insurer prepared to take you, and there was no guarantee of that. And of course, they could put the premiums up because of their cancer history, make it prohibitive to be able to buy insurance. Or they would find out their policy didn't cover some of the costs to do with, for example, cancer screenings or treatments or follow-up care. So the Act, the ADA, sorry, the ACA made it much more protection. There was much more protection for cancer patients and cancer survivors. So they're now with the ACA, health plans can't refuse to give you coverage because you have a pre-existing condition. You must have appeals, which is what I'm going to be talking about in more depth. There are no monetary limits on coverage, and they can't charge you more just because you have had a cancer diagnosis, for example, or you're having treatment. And there's much more of an emphasis on preventive care. And you know, they can't do this limiting of they've added kind of, if you're going to be paying out-of-pocket costs, which we all do, there are now limits on that, because again, it was the same kind of thing where you can have treatment, but we're only going to pay X amount of that coverage. And if your out-of-pocket costs are now, because of treatment for cancer, at the level of $20,000 a year on top of your insurance premiums, then so be it, because cancer is an expensive treatment. Nowadays, there are limits on how much you can be expected to pay out of pocket. So if you get a coverage denial, you've got your insurance, you're expecting to have treatment for something, and then you get notified that they are not going to be covering your procedure after all. The reason might be something simple, or it could be more complicated. So some of the simple reasons could be that there's been a change in your personal details. So maybe you have changed your name, or you have moved house, or you have changed your insurance, provider, whatever it is, and your medical office hasn't put the right thing in. So you've had a procedure, and at your doctor's office, they've used the wrong billing code. So those are things, once you find out what the reason is why you have been denied, if it's something that's really simple, one of the ones that quite often comes up, if you have more than one insurer. So for example, perhaps you're still working, but you're also on a second insurance. So perhaps it's your spouse's insurance, and you have, so that you have two, or you're on your employer's insurance, or you have private insurance, but you also have Medicare. So if you have more than one, that's one of the areas in which you can find yourself being denied, because it's possible that the insurer that is supposed to be billed as the primary, they're supposed to bill that one first. It's been put the wrong way around. So the one who's supposed to be the secondary insurer has been billed first, and all you'll get from your insurer is, we're denying it. And you may not understand why. Is it because of the treatment itself, or is it just because the wrong insurer has been billed first? So that's what you need to follow up about. If you find, whenever you hear that you've been denied coverage, the most important thing to do is to find out the reason why. And sometimes you get this in a letter, and sometimes it can be in a telephone call. But always dig into why exactly did this happen, and unless it's something simple, as I said, that you can just call up and say, oh, you've got the wrong, my name has changed, or that's been misspelled, or whatever it is, I've got 2 insurance providers. Are you sure you bill the right one first? This is the primary insurer. So always make sure that you check into that. And if it's something simple, it can be remedied simply. If it's more complicated, you'll know that because in the denial letter, you'll see that it says that they're denying it because the treatment is experimental, investigational, or that it lacks medical necessity, or because the care was provided out of network. Those are the most common ones, the most common reasons for why insurance coverage has been denied. So if the reason given for the denial is because it's one of the more complicated ones, it's not just a straightforward, we sent it to the wrong insurance provider, then this is where you now have to start with a process. So to have in mind when you're going to be preparing for an appeal, make sure that you make a copy of all the documents that you're going to be sending as a part of your appeal. So don't send your original documents. So if you've got letters from the doctor, or you've got something from the insurance company saying that they're denying you coverage, if you have a letter where you have something that says, we know you've got X coming up, procedure coming up, and you're being authorized for that, and then after you've had the procedure, or right before you've had the procedure, you're due to have the procedure, you're notified by your insurer that they're not now going to be covering it. That would be a very important document to be able to prove that, but you said you were going to cover this procedure. So anything that you have that is to do with that procedure that is now going to be denied, or that you've had and has subsequently after the fact been denied, you need to make a copy of all of that. And when you send in your appeal, you need to send it by certified mail, return receipt requested, so that you'll have proof that it was submitted. And then if you don't hear anything back from them within a week or two, then follow up and just check with them that they did receive that appeal package. You need to make sure that it's there. Although you should, if you use the certified mail return receipt requested, you should have, that green card come back to show that it got there. And of course, you can also track the package, but it's also very good just to follow up and make sure that it is in the hands of whoever it's supposed to be in. And very important, when you're doing an appeal, always check to see what the deadline is. First of all, for when you have to submit an appeal, but also important is, when are you supposed to be receiving a response from the insurer? Once you submit an appeal, the organization, the company must get back to you by a certain number of days, just as they give you, when they tell you they're not going to cover your procedure, they'll say you have, for example, 60 days to appeal this decision. So they give you a deadline. In the same way, when you submit your appeal, they now have a deadline to respond to your appeal by. So you must keep an eye on that. For any of this kind of process, always keep an eye on the deadlines. They mean everything when you're doing this. You do not want to miss a deadline. The other thing to caution you about is that what counts as an appeal? So when people first get a letter or sometimes a phone call telling them that the coverage has been denied, so unless your call is one of the simple cases that I spoke about, so it's just a mistake in your name, or a mistake they sent it to the wrong insurer first, unless it's something simple like that, make sure your conversation, if you're trying to find out what is going on, that it's not being treated as an appeal, because sometimes insurers allow appeals to be done in telephone conversation. So you want to make sure that your conversation with whoever you're asking things of, and maybe saying things to, is not being counted as your first appeal. You don't want to waste an appeal by mistake. And then, as I said, stay aware of any deadlines. Don't miss any deadlines. And so another thing that you want to keep in mind in this kind of situation is, what kind of insurance do you have? Because this is going to affect what your options are. So of course, everyone knows that it's like, you can have insurance through your employer, or you could have private insurance from another source. You can have purchased it yourself individually, or you could have government benefits like Medicare or Medicaid. And which of these you have is going to affect where your appeal has to be submitted. And so for the private, you know, if you have private insurance or state government insurance, the appeal processes may be different. The number of times, the number of steps that you have to appeal your case, again, will depend on whether you are appealing through the private system for private insurance, or if you have, for example, Medicare or Medicaid. And the structure of the process might be different. So the kind of deadline you would get for a private insurer may be different from if you're filing an appeal, a Medicare appeal. So again, another reason to keep track of those kind of details, again, so you don't miss any deadlines and you know exactly at what stage you are in your appeals process. So if you're dealing with private insurance, so for example, like employer based insurance. So again, you start off, what is the deadline for you to respond to their notification that they're not going to provide you with coverage for your procedure? How many days do you have to put this appeal together? And if you receive one of these letters, don't leave it to the last minute to start working on the appeal, because as I said, with each day you're missing a day of opportunity to put something very good together, to reply to them and say why your coverage should be allowed. The other thing is you need to read that letter carefully, and the main thing is you need to find out why your appeal was denied. So don't just stop at where it says, we don't think, we're not going to cover you for this procedure. You must find out why, because you cannot appeal something unless you know what it is you're appealing. So just them saying we're going to deny you coverage is not enough. You have to be very specific when you're appealing and a denial. So it might be easy to miss if it just says something like, because it's not medically necessary. Now that I've put this, at the forefront with this presentation, hopefully you'll be aware, if you see that phrase, of what it means and what it is they're looking for. But it is very important that you look specifically for that, so that you will know, or if somebody's assisting you, they will know what it is the aim is, so that you can put in a really good appeal. If you're notified by phone that the coverage is being denied, tell them to send that to you in writing, because in that letter is the instructions on how to appeal that decision. So that's important. So you need to start gathering information for yourselves. You need to get a summary of your insurance plan. Find out if there's been any information submitted by your doctor to do with this, because your doctor may also have been notified that the coverage has been denied. And every time you speak to someone, make a note of it. What date you spoke to them on, and obviously their names, write down their phone numbers, and just a brief summary of what the discussion was. So if you're preparing an appeal package, so sometimes if this is involving your medical facility or a doctor's office, there may be someone in that system, and particularly if you're in a medical facility, somebody who handles these kind of appeals. So sometimes you're doing an appeal by yourself, but if it's your medical provider who is going to be handling it, then you need to still be engaged, kept in the loop about what's happening, and you can ask that office that is taking care of it, for the doctor's office or the facility, you can ask them and just say, can you send me copies of whatever it is you're sending to the insurer, or anything that they send to you? I just want to know what's happening, because if you need to ask for help yourself on your own behalf, and you have an attorney that is going to be helping you, having this kind of background information is really important. So do stay in the loop, even if your doctor's office or the hospital is taking care of the actual appeal themselves. And if you are the one who's going to be submitting the appeal, then you need to make sure that you include, when you're sending it in, a copy of your appeal letter. So what they have sent to you, you need to send that copy back to them so they can see what they said to you. And then you will also prepare a cover letter, your appeal letter, and that is going to describe, it's going to basically say why what they have claimed, for example, it's not medically necessary, is incorrect. So this is where you would state something like, I disagree with this decision. I would like you to reconsider it, because as my doctor has told me, this is medically necessary because, and then you can set out why you believe this is medically necessary. And I should say, you would need to say more than because my doctor said so. What you would need is to speak with your doctor first, so that he or she can let you know precisely what it is, what was the reasoning behind why they had proposed this procedure or surgery or treatment, which type of, for example, chemo or radiation, whatever it is, so that you can reproduce, you can state why their decision is wrong. And you also need to have in your support, in support of your letter that you're going to be sending, something from your doctor's office saying, in the medical way of saying it, this is why this is important. This is why it is medically necessary for my patient to have this. So they want something from you, but you should, even though it's you doing the appeal, you should also include something from your doctor. And if there's anything else that's relevant from your medical records that's in support of your position, you would include that. And if there are, if you are able to do like a search online, you can often find really good medical articles and journals that you can, make a copy of and include that in the package and highlight in yellow, highlighter, just showing, this is what my condition is, and this is where it says this is the standard treatment for that. So whatever you can think of in terms of evidence that will bolster your argument that they should reconsider, you would put that in there. So in your appeal letter, you'd have your own identification, your name, your address, the usual things. The reason for the denial that they've given to you, put in the summary of your illness and the required treatment. And the corrected information would be where you're basically saying to them, no, you're wrong about that. I should be covered because such and such. So it is important that you directly look at their reasoning and counter that with your version. This is why you are wrong. So if your doctor letter should provide information about your illness and the prescribed treatment plan and why the treatment is medically necessary. And what would also be helpful, as I said, is if they include your medical, something from your medical records that's to do with the reason why they've denied it, and any kind of medical peer-reviewed documents, journals, that sort of thing. So that's your first appeal. And quite often when people contact us, they've already gone through their first appeal. Quite often they will contact us when they've been denied again. And so they now have usually one more internal appeal. So the way that the insurance companies are usually set up is that they will give you 2 goes to do an internal appeal. And quite often people will, their first appeal is used up without them really thinking about it, because it's usually a letter that just says, in essence, well, my doctor says that's what I need. And that will count as an appeal, but it's not an effective appeal, because they're asking for more than that. So that's why it's ideal if you can approach your first appeal in a more comprehensive way, the way that I've just described. But if that's not the case, but you still have a second internal appeal, then again, this is when you need to have this in mind, because again, you need to look at the deadlines. So you're going to have a second internal appeal. What's the deadline this time? If you haven't already done so, reach out to someone, and your doctor's office, if they didn't submit supporting evidence or a letter with your first appeal, ask them to do it this time. If you have not spoken to, perhaps a lawyer about what you need to do, this would be the time to do it. And again, you're watching the deadline for when the insurer is going to have to reply to you by, because if they don't reply to you by a certain date, by that deadline, they will have to provide that coverage that they had denied. So if they pass their deadline, you've automatically won by default. So again, that's why it's so important to keep track of deadlines like this. So if you go through a second appeal and it's denied again, you do have, and again, this is with private insurance companies, you can take that, your appeal to an external appeal. So you've used up your 2 internal appeals, but you do still have the chance of an external appeal. And in New York, this is handled by the New York State Department of Financial Services. So you have a 4-month deadline from the time of your first appeal decision. So again, you're watching those deadlines. So you don't want to miss it. So within 4 months of that decision by your insurer, the first decision, you can appeal, you can do an external appeal. And if your appeal was denied on, the basis of there being a claim of lack of medical necessity, or that the treatment was experimental or investigational, or in some cases, if their claim is that the facility or the provider was out of network. So if these are the reasons, and these do tend to be the main reasons that insurance companies use, and really from what I have seen, lack of medical necessity and calling the treatment experimental or investigational seem to be the overwhelming majority of the reasons why these are denied, coverage is denied. So the external process is that you can submit a case, an appeal case for this process, or your doctor's office can submit it, or it can be done with both of you participating. It's really just who is going to initiate this appeal. Many times when it's done by doctors, their office will take care of the external appeal, but If it's you starting it, then you should still ask your doctor to contribute to it, and you don't have to submit it all at the same time, yours and your doctor's, doing it all at the same time. Your doctor's office can submit something to do with your case using their section of that same appeal. So you can submit your part first, and then they can submit their part if you can't just do it all together. But the important thing is that form that is used, the appeal form, is designed to have a section for you as the patient and a section where the doctor would put their medical part in. And it's important, if possible, for you to have that fully rounded appeal sent in as the external appeals process, because in most instances, unless you're going to take it to the next stage and now make it a court case, this is going to be your last chance to fight your side without it becoming a court case. So this is why, if you reach the point when you're going to be doing an external appeal, you want it to be as good an appeal as you can make it. So, don't throw away that last chance. Do it as well as you can, and speak to an attorney if you need to do that for more guidance. So an external appeals process for patients. So there's an application form on the Department of Financial Services website, so you can actually see what the form looks like. And you can submit your part as soon as possible. So as long as it's within 4 months, as I said, of that first denial. And you need to mention the reason that the insurer gave for the denial, and that will be in the denial letter that you will have received. And then you're going to state why they're wrong. And as I said, if you need legal help, in addition to help from your doctor or your medical facility, then please do get that help. So the external process for doctors and other providers, it's kind of similar. They submit their information using the same form, or they can be supporting the one that you have put forward yourself. And as I said, the likelihood is it is going to be based on lack of medical necessity, or the claim that the treatment that your doctor, your physician, is trying to give you is experimental or investigational. So for an external appeal, it's generally $25 to submit that, and it certainly cannot exceed more than $75 in a single plan year. And if you're on Medicaid or have Child Health Plus, or if the fee would pose a hardship for you, then that can be waived. And if the person doing the appealing is a medical provider, some health plans can charge $50 for an appeal, but for you as the patient, it's going to be more likely $25. So there are obviously different types of denials. So regarding your doctor, if the denial is based on medical necessity, what your doctor will have to do, in support of your appeal, they need to add supporting medical records and any articles or peer reviews that would support the decision that they made, because essentially you're appealing it because your doctor has said, I believe that the best treatment for my patient is XYZ. So your doctor, in support of your application, should be able to provide information that shows why he or she believes that XYZ is the best treatment course for you. Same thing if it's experimental or investigational denial, they need to show that this is the standard, that the standard health services, what normally would be expected to be done, they've either tried that and it has not worked, or for some other reason, it's not appropriate for you. So this is why, to the insurance company, it may look like what they're proposing is experimental or investigational, but there is a reason for it. So they need to state that reason and provide any supporting medical evidence. If you have a rare disease, then the doctor who is writing in support can't be your treating physician. So it's really for them to confirm first that you do have a rare and life-threatening or disabling condition, or that the disease is one that can be classified as a rare disease. And then the doctor also has to confirm that none of the standard treatments that are available is likely to be beneficial in your case. It's really not going to work for treating your disease, this rare disease. And that the treatment that is being requested, it outweighs the risk of having that treatment. The benefit is going to outweigh the risk of you being given that treatment option. And if you're being put forward for a clinical trial, the doctor has confirmed that you have a life-threatening or disabling condition or disease, and that there is a clinical trial that looks like it's going to be beneficial to you, that you're eligible to participate in it, and that you would most likely be accepted. So that's the role of your doctor in that. So if you are told that you're being denied because your treatment, either the facility or the medical provider, is out of network, so you can put forward an appeal, and you can say that you've got an HMO or managed care insurance contract, and your pre-authorization request is being denied because the service is not available. The service is not available in network, and the insurer is offering an alternative that they're claiming is to the same standard as the one that your doctor wants to give you. So your doctor then has to say that what is being offered in network is not of the same standard. It's materially different from what he or she feels would work best for you. And again, they have to add supporting evidence to that claim. But that's what sometimes happens, where the insurance company will say, well, I don't see why you can't have X. This is what is covered in network. And then it's up to your doctor to say X is not going to work for this patient. It's not the same as the treatment that I am proposing. They're not equal, and it's not going to have the same beneficial effect. If you're on Medicare, just straightforward Medicare, you're not eligible to use the external appeal process. There is a separate channel, and you'd have to call Medicare or go online, and then it sets out what the Medicare appeal process is. It's got more steps than the private insurer, because if you have original Medicare, the denial letter that you would get saying that you're not going to be covered, you're going to go straight to your Medicare summary notice, and that's where you'll find out what it is that you are supposed to be covered for. So you want to look, based on what they're saying is the reason for the denial, you want to make sure that you know what you should be covered for. And you will have more chances of appeal, because unlike the private insurance, where you have basically 2 internal appeals, within Medicare, there are 5 levels of appeal. So you just work your way up. And hopefully, if you're putting forward a good appeal package, that somewhere within that system, you will get the decision changed so that you will be authorized to have coverage. But yeah, you do within that system have more options. You have more appeal levels. With Medicaid, if you're regular Medicaid, again, you can't use the external appeal process, but again, Medicaid has its own internal process. But if you are covered not under regular Medicaid, but under a Medicaid managed care plan, then you can use the external appeal. process. So again, you need to be aware of exactly what kind of insurance do you have, and that will play a part in what options are available to you in that appeal process. So in summary, important thing to think of first. What was the basis for the insurer telling you that you are not going to be covered? What's the reason for the denial? Look straight for that. It will be in that denial letter. When you're responding to it, when you're putting in your appeal, stick to the facts. It's okay to mention things like, you know, you've been in a lot of pain because of this condition, and the treatment that's been proposed by your doctor, you know, the doctor has said that this will be very helpful to alleviating that pain, or, you know, this kind of, it's okay to say things like that. When we say don't get emotional, it's because sometimes people will put things in there like, you're trying to kill me. You know, insurance companies are all the same. They're just trying they're hoping I will die. I've paid my premiums, you're just hoping I'll die. So you don't want to have anything like that in your appeal letter. Keep it factual, but you can certainly say things like, you know, I've been in extreme pain for such and such, and this proposed treatment is something that I have been told will help me, this kind of thing. So it just depends on, you know, what approach you take, but you want to make sure that you're getting your facts across, but that whoever is reading your appeal understands the toll that the current situation is taking on you, but without, as I said, accusing them of trying specifically to harm you. So that's the difference. With the medical plan document, make sure you know the details of your plan. So I know that it's very easy to, particularly if you've been with the same insurance company, medical insurer for many years, you just renew your the premium every year. You sign up for it again, and you take notice of, have they put my premiums up? Have they put the amount that I have to pay as a co-payment up? What are my deductibles? You look at that. That's what most of us notice each time we sign up for our new insurance coverage. But what you also need to be aware of, and particularly if you do have a denial, is the more nitty-gritty details. What is covered? What is not covered? What needs to be pre-authorized? So be aware of that. If you are talking with your doctor and things are being proposed, that's a good time to go home and check what is being proposed against your insurance, and make sure, first of all, that it looks like they'll cover it, and secondly, to check whether you need to have this thing pre-authorized. Some doctors' offices are really good about taking care of calling up insurance companies and getting those pre-authorizations, but others don't do that. So you need to be proactive, or have someone help you if you're not up to it yourself, to see if they can help you with those steps, to put those things in place at an early stage, and you may be able to avoid finding out later, no, we're not going to cover it because, for example, it should have been pre-authorized. So make sure you know what your plan document actually sets. The insurer's plan summary, you need to ask them for a copy of the plan if you don't have that yourself. And just have an idea from their perspective what it is they're saying they cover. Because some of these things, and again, you might not find out until you get a denial, at which point this is when you'd ask for it. What are you covering? What are you basing the denial on? you know, I've seen cases where somebody's appealing and we get a copy of that, you know, the kind of like background summary from the insurer, and it gives you a better idea of what it is they are asking. It's like, we, the insurer, will cover this as long as the medical situation is this. It's very hard to do a good appeal if you don't know what you're appealing against. So anything you can get from the insurer, if you find that there is, you know, it's been denied, it will help you if you have their guidelines. It gives you their point of view so that you know how to answer them in your appeal. So again, if they're what are they talking about medical necessity? What does that mean to them? And how can you show that in your situation you meet that criteria? So any other related documents, you must read any letters that, you know, has been sent to or received from the insurer before the denial. So as I said, if you've got anything that it could be counted as a pre-authorization, you would definitely make sure that that's like, you, according to your own letter, you did pre-authorize this. And I have seen appeals where somebody has been authorized, pre-authorized, and then they've received a denial after the fact. So don't throw any of these letters away whenever you're having a treatment. Don't let them go astray. Anything to do with your medical situation, keep it in a little file or something that you can get back to it if somewhere down the line you find out that you're going to have to go back because someone is now saying we're not going to cover that. That's all evidence in your favor. So initial follow-up, take notice of dates. If you're notified of a denial, who told you? Clarify the reason for that denial. What information is the insurance company looking for? That's crucial because that's going to tell you how to answer them. So you get copies of whatever documents your doctor has submitted on your behalf to the insurer, and make a note of any names, details, conversations that you've had with this, and a little summary of what the conversation was about. And keep copies of every communication between you and your insurance company. Because as I said, if you need to get legal help or advice, that is very important. All of this is very important if you're going to need help from a third party at some time in the future. And as I said, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint, but I've put here some free legal services, and you can follow up if you're in this situation, but at least you know that there are options out there. If you have questions, if you have a problem, there are places that can help you. And these are some other resources. Now, the resources, these are free because there are financial eligibility requirements. So you have to be within a certain financial resources, so assets and income requirements, in order to be eligible for these resources. As I said, so I'm from the Cancer Advocacy Project, and so we provide free assistance, but like the other two options, it does depend on, for example, income and assets. It's for low and moderate income callers. For those who are not eligible for free services, there is the legal referral service, and this is to private attorneys, so there's no financial eligibility requirement. And what is very helpful is for the legal referral service, you can have a up to 30 minutes consultation, and it's just $35. So that's certainly a good resource for you if you're not eligible for the free services. So you'll have access to that when I